So in all my years as an employer, Dennis, I've like interviewed hundreds of people, and more than their technical skill or the capability of how they would contribute to the organization, my biggest worry or question or test was, am I able to work with them? Can I work with them? Will they be able to gel into the organization? And the, and the question that I would use to gauge that was, tell us about yourself. You just kick back and you throw this question at somebody else, and they're screwed. Now, even after doing this all my life, I cannot answer that question very well myself. This is one of those questions that you just don't know how to answer. And there's so many variables, depending on who's asking, what's the environment, what's the situation, what's going on. There's just so many variables to this question, but this is that quintessential question, which I think almost always you end up answering, even for interviews and as well for, social situation, networking. You meet somebody new. The first thing that comes up is, what do you do? And you can't say, I'm an engineer. That's stupid as shit, man. You got to tell them more about yourself. I've got my own experiences. What's your take on this one?
Well, as an HR professional, that's one of the big things I do is I interview a lot of people, and I'm always very surprised at how many people. I mean, this is not a new question. This isn't even a new concept. I'm always very surprised at how many people, struggle with this, with answering this, or even act surprised that they're going to be asked that. I think honestly, FQ, in my experience, and I want this to be heard very clearly, is that when an employer asks you that question, they want to know about you. So what I would suggest, we always kind of get into our heads and go, oh, well, we have to tell the person interviewing me what they want to hear. And what I'm going to suggest is tell them who you are as a person. So instead of telling people what you do for a living, in a job interview, you're going to tell them about your experience, your work experience, your educational experience, but what they really want to know about you. Because let's be honest, if you would have, as you're vetting candidates and you're going through applications, if you're looking for somebody that's an engineer and they're a bank clerk, then you wouldn't be interviewing them in the first place. So it's really important, which is to know yourself and to know who you are. So remember, we're so much more than what we do for a living. Let people know, hey, I have a family. I have, I'm active in my church or my mosque. I'm active in the community. I do these types of things. I'm married. I have kids. So it really is about being personal. And what I'm going to say is that, if it is not a good fit, you both need to be willing to walk away. So if you're interviewing from a perspective of scarcity, of I better say what I need to say or I won't have another opportunity, you'll probably end up being very miserable at that job.
Okay, I'm going to take it beyond the job interview. Let's assume I meet somebody in a social environment, and for me, this question is a test of whether there's going to be a conversation during the evening. If this person is going to come back to me about, I'm a doctor, I work at that hospital, that conversation is not going to go anywhere. So both interview as well as social or networking environment, this is that question where what I'm looking for is somebody who can expand, who can bullshit beyond the obvious, I'm a doctor, I went to that school, I'm an MBA, I did this. No, somebody who can actually expand, somebody who can say nothing yet say something about themselves. Obviously, no one's going to tell me the deep, dark personal details. A lot of times they won't even tell you, how many wives or how many children they have, or girlfriends they have. But they need to be able to expand. They need to be able to, build a few sentences, have a conversation. And at times the language barriers, at times the societal barriers, at times people are just not capable of having that conversation. And also depends which part of life you're in. If you're young, if you're like fresh out of school, 25, whatever, you don't really have much to say about yourself. But that should not stop you from expanding. That should not stop you from saying a thing or two, which may not necessarily be completely true about yourself, but it should be something which leads to a conversation. So for me, this is that am I going to stay on that table if it's social? If it's a job, am I going to be able to introduce this person to my clients? Am I going to be able to hang out with this person? Will this person be able to gel into the organization, or he's going to be just stuck with few words in a corner, and that's really not somebody I want in my organization.
Right.
So my advice to people who deal with this question is, please expand beyond the obvious. And I want to take a comment here, which we'll do it later, but here, Khushbu says, interview, please tell us about yourself. Me, first, this dude has my resume. Khushbu, that's the point. Resume is unimportant. I will, you get these, and an employer gets hundreds of resumes full of bullshit.
Yeah.
And this is full of BS. The reason of actually putting you in front of them on a table is to see, are you going to gel into this organization? Can I have a conversation with you? Can I talk to you? If I really want to know what you're capable of doing, I can read your resume and say, trash, Tinder, yeah, right or left, that's it. But no, I want to now, well, let's take Tinder, man. Tinder's your resume. But when you meet, you don't want to hear the Tinder shit. You've already written that shit. Go beyond that. Expand on the conversation, yeah?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think I think one of the things to really remember is that, I think in a work environment or, in an interview at anything, I don't know why this is. I know why it is in the United States, because work is everything. 2/3 of our life is spent working. And so that's why I take the approach that make your professional life better. Your personal life falls into line as well. Because it's very important over here. But what I'm going to say is, especially, so take it out of, look at a networking situation. Why is it that I deliberately ask people, hey, so tell me about yourself. The very first thing, oh, well, I am an engineer or I am a doctor. That's not what I asked you. What I asked you is to tell me about yourself. So tell me about your interests. Tell me about your hobbies. We're never going to build rapport with other people unless they get to know us. And I think in some ways, FQ, we're afraid to let people get to know us because we're afraid they might see some cracks in the shell, or that we're so afraid of what other people will think, instead of coming out and going, hey, you know what? We can be cordial to one another. We don't have to like everything that's the same, and maybe it's best if we don't talk at all. So I think that we're a little bit too reserved. And what I'm going to suggest is really, really get to know yourself. Instead of telling people what you do for a living, tell them who you are. I am a father. I am a husband. I'm active in my community. I do all of these things other than what I do for a living, because really we kind of subjugate ourselves into being a one-trick pony. And all of us are so much more than that. And I'm going to come out and say this as well. If you don't know who you truly are and you can't answer this question, then I'm going to say that there's a really good chance that you have become what you do for a living. And when you no longer do that for a living, well, who are you now? And that's a very difficult position that a lot of people end up finding themselves in.
Yes, exactly. You call it one-trick pony. That's exactly what I was going to say. When you limit yourself to a profession or something very small, you're basically reducing yourself to nothing. You're a human being. You've got experience. You've spent, let's say, if it's a job interview, social, you're about 25 plus. You went to university or something, and you've got something behind you. So you have to present that. And what I want people to understand on this topic is, when somebody asks this question, this is not a question about your skill or capability.
Right.
This is a question about your broader view, the larger picture about yourself. You can go even beyond your husband, your wife, your family. If somebody would ask me, like I said, even I'm not good at answering this question, but I would say something bigger about myself. Also, because at my point in life, I've done so many things in life. I can't just say I'm an electrical engineer. I'm not anymore. I'm a broadcaster. I'm a TV talk show host. I'm a geek. I'm a software developer, entrepreneur. It's a lot of shit. But all those things are small projects in life which come and go.
Yes.
These projects are not me.
Right.
You could be doing, supposing you're 50 now, you've done many things. You've gone through different careers, you've gone through different jobs. So if you reduce yourself to those jobs or careers, you're really minimizing yourself. You're just, reducing yourself to nothing. So you have to talk about, I'm a learner, I want to grow. I want to see
Yes.
the world. I want you. Something bigger about yourself needs to come out. Obviously, it'll have to fit with you, who you are. I was just thinking when I proposed this topic, and I was thinking if Dennis, I mean, I really don't know much about myself. If I was Dennis, and I really admire him for that, I would be saying, hey, I'm a consultant who helps save marriages and people stay together, and I help people become better people, and I help businesses grow. I mean, that's what probably I would say about Dennis, and that opens the door to a lot more questions I can ask him, and then he can tell me, and that's a conversation.
Yes.
If he just said, I'm an executive coach, that's nothing.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's how you word it.
Yeah, it completely is, and it really like again, what I like that what you said is and in fact, I literally about 10 minutes before this broadcast started, I just offered somebody a position, just hired somebody, and one of the reasons is because they literally came out and said, because one of the questions I asked them is, how can we best support your success? So if we hire you, how can we set you up to be the most successful? And what I heard was, well, you know what? As long as you continue to keep me challenged and provide me with educational opportunities, I'm like, sold. Right there. There's somebody that wants to be challenged. They like to learn. They like to learn new things. They like to implement new things. So we really tell a lot of people, a lot of times we try to dance around these questions, but even the dancing around tells the interviewer like a lot about you. So really, before you go into an interview, before you go into a networking situation, I'm just going to say, take a moment and learn about yourself, regardless of whether you're retired. It doesn't matter when you know who you are. And I am gonna qualify that with, it's who you are today, because who I was yesterday is not who I'm trying to be again today. Right? So one of the things about us is that we don't just get one life purpose. I mean, unless you're just that one trick pony, and I don't agree with that at all. But we have many purposes as we move through life, and know who you are today, and make goals and plans for who you want to become, not what do you want to do. In fact, I say this to people when I speak to younger people. Instead of asking them the question of what do you want to do for a living, I ask them, what kind of life do you want to live? So if you're having a little bit of a trouble understanding who you are and being able to answer this question, when you figure out the type of life you want to live, start with that, and everything will fall into place. Because if you want to take and make $1 million, then taking and working on as a bicycle mechanic probably isn't going to make you that kind of money. So you need to have know where you're going as well.
You said retired, and that's an interesting example to put in here, because retired people probably have nothing to say about themselves. When I retired, I didn't really know how to word it. Then I met a friend, somebody much older than me, and he had retired. He had inherited a huge business property, and he liquidated it, and I didn't know that. So I said to him, so what you up to these days? He goes, well, I do what I want to do when I want to do. And I'm like, huh? He goes, well, I do what I want to do when I want to do. And I'm like, so what happened to that? Well, I said, well, I liquidated it. So I said, what you doing these days then? Well, I'm building such and such. I said, why? He said, because I can. And he laughed. And that was so beautiful. He says, yeah, well, I made my money. I've got the bucks. I do what I want to do when I want to do. That's it. So what are you doing today? What I feel like doing today. I do exactly what I want to do. And that's a beautiful definition of being retired.
Yes.
You do what you want to do when you want to do.
Yes.
So it doesn't matter which stage of life you're in. It doesn't matter how small or large your current project is. It doesn't matter how small or large your current job is. You are bringing value to somebody, and you are a part of a larger picture. You need to identify that larger picture. Even if you're just, a mail boy, even if you're just a tea boy, you're still, if you're working in an organization, if you're working in a house, even if you're housemaid, it doesn't matter what you are, who you are. There is a larger picture. You have dreams, you have aspirations, you have desires. Like Dennis said, share your dreams, share what you want, how you want to live your life. Doesn't matter what you're doing today does not define you. where you want to go does define you.
Right.
So when I say, tell us about yourself, tell me who you want to be, where you want to go, or what you have already achieved. Let's talk about that. Don't reduce yourself to that little piece of project that you're doing today or the job you would call in for. That's not important.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was just going to say, because you know what, even I look back over the course of like my career, and even though for the last 20 years now, I've been basically doing the same thing, you know, human resources, psychology, organizational development and performance, I've been doing that the last 20 years, but the context has changed. The context has changed. So even though I'm doing the same thing, who I am has changed because I've grown. I've had new experiences, So I want to just say that there's nothing wrong with enjoying what you do. There's nothing wrong with having that be part of your identity, but that's all it is part of it. So you can do the same job for many, many years, but who you are as a person really should be focused on growth. Tell that to people and know it for yourself, because who you are today is not necessarily who you are in 5 or 10 years. And I'm talking specifically about what you believe, what you value, because as we get older, things change. What we believe, what we value, experiences come into play there, and it changes our perspective. I mean, before, coming up on my 50th birthday, what I can tell you is, like, when I was coming up on my 30th birthday, I was aggressive AF. Like, everything in life, I attacked it hardcore. Now I'm almost 50, it's like, I don't know that I need to do that, and even though I'm doing basically the same job. So keep that in mind. I think, and we have some interesting questions coming as well.
I'm going to give one more example before we take a question. Think of yourself like a TV series which has run 100 seasons. If you talk about Star Trek, if you talk about Friends, if you talk about the Big Bang Theory.
Yes.
You have to define the show and not an episode. Do not define yourself with episodes in your life. Define yourself with a series which has gone on for 30, 40, 25 years.
Right.
Talk about what Star Trek is about. Star Trek can go through many generations. It can have many episodes per generation, but still Star Trek. So you need to talk about the big series, the big picture, and not the small episodes in your life. Let's go to the comments, man.
Absolutely. Yeah. I just wanted to touch on this again really quickly. Khushbu, this is exactly what we're talking about. They do have the resume. And so I'm going to tell you, as the guy who's holding the resume quite often, is that I have that right there. In fact, I don't really, one of the things I tell people is they're like, well, I didn't have such a good experience. I'm like, you know what? I'm more concerned about where you want to go as opposed to where you've been. So remember. And here's the other thing is, tell people, if they ask you what you like and dislike, tell them. If it's not a good fit, you do not want to work there. If it's not a good fit in a social setting, like, you don't want to be like that person or in that social circle or environment. So, Khushbu, great comment.
Well, hang on. Dennis, connect to that, take this one. It'll basically connect with that. Irfan.
Hey, Irfan, nice to see you. Thanks for joining us again. Asked about Pakistan, my parents and my siblings, etc.
So the last line is that when you ask the interviewer, do they want to ask him anything about my technical skills? Said no, that I have read your resume. I want to know Irfan the person, not Irfan the banker.
Yes, and actually, I think I'd like to know Irfan the banker. Irfan, that is absolutely perfect. That's great, and that really illustrates the point, and that's really, really true. Is let people know who you are. Very good, thank you. Doing overkill on the info, yeah. Rafia, extremely, very, very, very common. What I'm going to just point out right now is listening. I was thinking about this the other day. I have sat in so many interviews throughout my career, and just the stuff that ends up getting said. But really, the biggest challenge is what doesn't get said. So what I'm going to suggest, Rafia, if you do something, just answer the question. 95% of the people sitting in an interview will never answer the question. So answer the question, focus on that, and you'll, I think you'll get into a rhythm.
And the downside of talking too much is you lose your thought.
Yes, absolutely. And guilty of that myself. So, Shamim, thank you. Thank you very much. I think I'm dressed nicely all the time, but, sometimes, I clean up well, huh? Thank you. Hamza, interview is an opportunity for the person to sell him or herself rather than being naive and going through your education and experience because that stuff is present in your CV. Yeah, agreed. Sell yourself, and really, I'm just going to say you can't sell anything that you don't know about, right? So it's important if you're going into a sales position, you need to know what the product is that you're going to be selling. In an interview, you're what you're selling. So good. So know yourself, be able to answer that question. I'm active on social media. I don't know what that's really referring to, Raf. But yes.
She's saying how she would answer that question.
Oh, okay. Outstanding. Kushbu, you silly goose. I was born at a very young age. Brilliant, love, brilliant.
Okay, the next one is interesting. I know you've made this in jest, but you know what? That's actually not a bad answer. Being a jack of all trades, master of none is actually a good skill. And depending on what you're applying for, I would take a jack of all, master of none. You can hire masters. I'd rather take a jack of all for a managerial position. If I don't want you to be an expert plumber, I would love you to know something about plumbing. So if you know something about plumbing and wiring and something about being a doctor and something about being an engineer, that's pretty good. So I know you were joking about it, but that's actually a good skill.
Yeah, absolutely. It really is. It is a tricky question. It absolutely could be. It absolutely can be. So again, really know who you are and know where, be able to answer the question, where have you been and where are you going? That doesn't have anything to do with what you've already put on your CV. And Hamza.
This is interesting, man. This comment is really interesting. We were going to talk about this.
Yeah.
Ghosting.
So I don't want to really get into that today, but that's on our agenda. That is on our agenda. I will absolutely to discuss this week because I'm just going to say the ghosting is really nothing more than a form of conflict avoidance, and so it just doesn't make a lot of sense. I am in the middle of an interview process right now that I'm facilitating for a client of mine. And the interesting thing is this is an all-female business. So I'm hiring all females. They ask me questions, well, how did you get involved? Well, the reason I'm involved is because I understand the process. I understand the process and I understand how people think. So if you ghost, again, please come back because we're going to discuss this. But it is terrible. I had 12 interviews on my agenda for today. Let's see, the first part of my morning, I had 6 interviews, 4 didn't show. So fortunately, and I even, the only reason I knew they weren't gonna show, because truthfully, I got tired of, I just started hunting them down, and because I got tired of sitting there waiting for people to show up for an interview that they scheduled. I didn't chase these people down. They came aboard, they found it, they scheduled an interview, and then they don't show. So for me, it gets really, really tired. I get really, really frustrated and tired of sitting there. It's once again the bridesmaid and never the bride. So, I'm sitting there all by myself like a bridesmaid waiting to be picked next. So, so show up to your interviews. If nothing else, if you can't make it, be a professional, be a decent human being, have a little bit of mercy and respect for the other person, and just say, hey, I'm not going to make it. Hey, you know what? I'd rather be told to go F myself than to just be ghosted.
Yeah. Okay.
How do I say I'm good at computers and technical stuff? Rafia, that should really kind of be on your resume and stuff. And so that's the stuff that you're good at computers, your technical abilities. That's what's really important on a CV. FQ?
But I agree with that completely, 100%. But if this is what really defines you, you can expand this. And this is something about me. I'm really good at computers and I love technical stuff. And the way I say it is that, I listen to Pink Floyd when I want to relax myself, even though it's really dark music. And when I listen to Pink Floyd, I start coding. A computer is an auxiliary part of my existence, and I'm really good at it. So I would not just say I'm good at computers, I would expand it in some way. And this is actually a fact. If I'm upset about something, if I'm tired, if I'm exhausted, I need to reboot my head, I'm going to start writing an application. I'll just code it, and I'll never use it. I'll throw the bloody thing away after 5 days, but I'll spend 5 days coding a few thousand lines of code, and that's it. So yes, it's perfectly all right for you, even if you're applying for the job as maybe a nanny or maybe a secretary. But it's okay to say that but I really am into computers and anything has to do with computing, programming, web development. I do a lot of that stuff. So yes, that's all right to, if this is not a part of your real resume, it can be a part of who you are. Gaming,
Yes.
a lot of people like gamers have nothing to do with their real job. So I'm here trying to become a supervisor, a plumbing supervisor, but I am a gamer on the side, which I'm not. I mean, if you are.
I like this one from our good friend Irfan. So it was memorable about a candidate. He asked me questions, yes. So when I'm interviewing somebody, I always ask them, do you have any questions for me? And I'm going to tell you, so everybody watching, here's a tip. So if you go for a promotional interview or you're going for a job interview and you're given the opportunity to ask a question, so you're the candidate and they say, hey, do you have any questions that you'd like to ask of us? The number one question that you should be asking is, yes, could you please tell me about the most successful person that has ever held this position? And at that point, what's going to happen is the person interviewing is going to go, oh, yes, wow, like this person was on time. This person, like they worked extra hours. They did this, they did this. And what that tells you as the candidate is exactly what they're looking for in you. So there you go. Yes. Thank you, Javed. Pink Floyd is awesome. And I actually saw them in 1987. I was at a live concert in 1987 with Pink Floyd. It was amazing. Great experience.
I saw the message too long. There was something wrong with my audio. I was using the wrong mic. I saw the message now.
You sound great now.
Well, I was using the wrong mic. I need to fix my technology, man. I thought I had figured this weekend. Yeah.
Well, sometimes, you got the technical abilities, but you spend, you don't always have to be so technical when you know about yourself, right?
COVID was, I was hoping COVID would really energize me, this pandemic being locked in, and I would have time to do a lot of stuff. But on the contrary, after I lost my mother, after that, I just sort of became lazy, man. I don't do shit the whole day. I just waste my days. I've started questioning if it's worth it or not. If everything that I'm doing is worth it. I guess that's a 55 plus syndrome, man.
No, it's not.
It's
It is
not.
and that's what we end up learning is that it's not. And you look back at like all the fights that you've engaged in, the conflict with relatives and friends and everything else, and it's just like, whoa, that was so not worth it. So yeah, that's a good place to be. So thanks for telling us about that part of yourself, FQ. Hey, everybody, thanks so much for joining us. We'll look forward to seeing you again tomorrow. Later.